Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this session that I think is going to be really quite special on promoting digital literacy. It's one of our 3 sessions that we're offering as part of this series. The last one was a couple of weeks ago, and we'll post in the chat here the recording and PowerPoint slides for that session, which was entitled Navigating the Digital World, Empowering Adult Learners with Essential Tech Skills. Our session today is entitled Equipping Adult Learners, Strategies for Effective Digital Literacy Instruction. So this is going to have a little bit more of an adult learner focus in terms of some of the tools that they can use in their daily lives and tools that you can use in the classroom. We I think most folks probably know the drill in terms of questions, but if you have any questions anytime during the session, please add them to the chat. At the end, we'll also open it up if you prefer to speak your questions. We'd be happy to have you do that and unmute yourself. In the meantime, if you could keep yourself muted, we'd appreciate that. I'm Greg Smith, Executive Director of the Florida Literacy Coalition. I'm joined today by my colleague Stephanie Rogers, our Education and Training Coordinator, and of course by our presenter, who I'm happy to introduce to you at this point, Rebecca DeJesus. And Rebecca has done a number of different sessions for us. She's a real tech guru. We like to, she's a self-proclaimed tech junkie, but we also see her as a guru because she really stays connected to new developments in technology and does that in such a way from her perspective as an adult education instructor for many years, program coordinator and career specialist with Orange County Public Schools. So she brings a real unique perspective to this subject. With that, actually, before I do that, I do want to do a shout out and thank the Florida Department of Education for their support in making this webinar possible. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you so much and welcome everybody. It's nice to see you here joining today. And if you can, I see that you're posting, a lot of you, your locations and where you work, but can you post your titles in the chat? What do you do? Are you a teacher, tutor, administrator, coordinator? It'll just help me understand who I'm speaking to. And while you're doing that, I'll just reiterate some of the things that Greg said. This is a part 2 of a 3-part series. I hope to see you in the 3rd one also. This is going to focus on teacher tools. I am a longtime GED and ESOL instructor for adult education. I am super passionate, and I always say that teaching GED or ABE GED is the love of my work life. And I do a lot with my local technical college. I work directly for the technical college. So I love adult education and I understand the diversity and the unique needs of the adult learner. So my perspective when it comes to technology is really finding tools that are easy for teachers and educators to use and tools that you can quickly incorporate into your classroom or quickly incorporate with students, because I know that educators are not, we don't have an overabundance of time to plan and prep. We must work with students. So I hope to inspire you today to use just one new digital tool, and we're going to kind of take a more holistic approach to looking at some digital literacy or just literacy in general concerns today, or concerns or considerations to make. So I see I've got some tutors in the room. Placement and transition specialist. Okay, we might have a wide variety of different attendees today. So this is part 2. We will have part 3, session 3 next Monday, and that's going to be focused on AI. You are going to see a couple AI-based tools today also, but I'm going to focus today on the teacher side of implementing digital literacy tools. I want to make a quick shout out to the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy, and Digital Promise, which is where actually one of the tools that I'll show today is a website developed by Digital Promise. We will be sharing the resource guide at the end of the session. And if I could describe this resource guide, I would say it's sort of like an encyclopedia of ideas of how to incorporate digital literacy into your classroom. So in addition to trying to show some actual specific tools that you can use, I hope to just give you some resources and some information that might generate some general ideas of things that you might do with your students. So we're I hope to combine both of those sort of theoretical tools and actual websites and things that you can use. So I'm going to start by showing a 5-minute segment of this 18-minute video, because I think that it helps to sort of start off some of the theory of literacy in general. So bear with me. I hope that everything goes well and that you can hear this. And Greg or Stephanie, if you could just let me know that the sound is working when I start it. I love this video. I did post the whole link for you here. It's an 18-minute video. I'm only going to show you 5, but this is a teacher and he is really talking about sort of teaching to the middle. So I'm just going to play the video and then give you a few comments about that.
It's 1952 and the Air Force has a problem. They've got good pilots flying better planes, but they're getting worse results and they don't know why. And for a while, they blamed the pilots. They even blamed the technology. And they eventually got around to blaming the flight instructors. But it turned out that the problem was actually with the cockpit. Let me explain. Imagine you're a fighter pilot. You're operating a machine that in some cases can travel faster than the speed of sound.
I know everyone tells you to time block to be more productive, but it doesn't really work. Let me explain why. Time block.
And where issues between success and failure, sometimes life and death, can be measured in split seconds. If you're a fighter pilot, you know that your performance depends fundamentally on the fit between you and your cockpit. Because after all, what good is the best technology in the world if you can't reach the critical instruments when you need them the most? But this presents a challenge for the Air Force, because obviously pilots are not the same size. So the issue is, how do you design one cockpit that can fit the most individuals? For a long time, it was assumed that you could do this by designing for the average pilot. That almost seems intuitively right. If you design something that fit for the average size person, wouldn't it fit most people? It seems right, but it's actually wrong. And 60 years ago, an Air Force researcher, Gilbert Daniels, proved to the world just how wrong this really is and what it was costing us. Here's how he did it. He studied over 4,000 pilots, and he measured them on 10 dimensions of size. And he asked a very simple question. How many of these pilots are average on all 10 dimensions? The assumption was that most of them would be. Do you know how many really were? 0. Gilbert Daniels proved there was no such thing as an average pilot. Instead, what he found was that every single pilot had what we call a jagged size profile, right? It means no one's at the same on every dimension. And this makes sense. Just because you're the tallest person doesn't mean you're the heaviest. It doesn't mean you have the broadest shoulders or the longest torso. But this is tricky because if every pilot has a jagged size profile and you design a cockpit on average, You've literally designed it for nobody. So the Air Force realized they had a problem. And their response was bold. They banned the average. Meaning that moving forward, they refused to buy fighter jets where the cockpit was designed for an average-sized pilot. And instead, they demanded that the companies who built these planes design them to the edges of dimensions of size. Meaning that rather than design for, say, the average height, they wanted a cockpit that could accommodate as close to the shortest pilot and the tallest pilot as the technology would allow. Now, the companies that made these planes, as you could imagine, weren't happy, right? They argued and lobbied, and they said it's going to be impossible, or at least impossibly expensive, to build a flexible cockpit. But once they realized that the Air Force wasn't going to budge, suddenly it was possible. And it turned out it wasn't that expensive. And in fact, they made great strides, leveraging simple solutions that we all take for granted in our everyday lives, like adjustable seats. And as a result, the Air Force not only improved the performance of the pilots that they already had, but they dramatically expanded their talent pool. And today, we have the most diverse pool of fighter pilots ever. But here's the thing. Many of our top pilots would have never fit in a cockpit designed on average. So, most of us have never sat in the cockpit of a $150 million fighter jet, right? But we've all sat in the classroom. And I would argue I would argue that these are the cockpits of our economy.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there, but I have linked that whole video for you. So I am just going to point out a couple things that I think are highlighted in that video. Technology, when we look at technology as educators, it really should just be something that is a tool for us to expand our access to all of our students. So as we go through some of these digital tools today, or for any of you that might be a little hesitant to incorporate technology because you don't love it, or maybe you don't love it as much as I do, whatever tools are good for you, just give them a try, because you'll never know which tool will appeal to which student. And I think that in this video, what we're really looking at is how much designing products that appeal to the wide range of humans is really important. And I think a lot of the best parts of modern day technology and these websites that I'm going to share is that they really enable us to differentiate our instruction and provide accessibility to a wider variety of students. So I just encourage you to pick the tools that you might want to try just to see how they sit with your different students. I remember teaching a math class, an adult education GED math class, and having, I remember very regularly in the class was a woman and a man, and the woman was way better at doing math. We were solving equations, and she was doing so much better than he was with those equations. And then I introduced algebra tiles. And for those of you that know those, they're very tactile, but not everybody understands what algebra tiles represent. They're, little blocks and squares and rectangles. And when I introduced the algebra tiles, he 100% understood it. And she did not understand those algebra tiles at all, but she could solve equations on paper. And he struggled on paper, but he really understood the algebra tiles. And for me, that was such a magical moment just to show how one little strategy really appealed to one person and not another. So as you incorporate digital literacy or different pieces of technology into your classroom, just remember it might not appeal to everybody, but it's okay if it appeals to some of them, because you never know what might appeal to each student. So when we talk about digital literacy, we're also talking a lot about just general literacy and skills, life skills in general, and the factors that impact learning in general, because it's not always about just computer use. It can be about so many different things if our learners are struggling. So I'm going to jump into the Digital Promise website. And one of the things that we're going to look at on these website is all of these different learner factors. So I'm going to just show you these very quickly and ask you, when you think about your own learning, okay, so this is a prompt for you in the chat, if you don't mind. When you think about your own learning or your own ability to function at work, which of these categories or which factors that you see on the screen have the strongest impact on you? I know that when we did this exercise, I've done this exercise in a class as a participant, and for me, sleep jumped out at me in such a big way, because I feel like I have a lack of sleep and I know that it affects my performance. So if you don't mind, in the chat, what areas of these learner factors that you're seeing on the screen do you find have the largest impact on your ability to learn or perform at work? Can you type your answers in the chat? I see a lot of good answers there. Vision. I think vision is a very important one to note, especially when it comes to interacting with computers, because if you're having trouble seeing the screen, it may impact your attitude about using a computer or using technology at all. I think that's a big one. What else are you seeing that personally affect you, or what is something that really affects you as you are at work? I see sleep and emotions. That's something certainly I speak to a lot of teacher friends of mine about, especially women, about managing our emotions and trying to push through sometimes when we know our emotions don't match logic. Focus, yes, I completely understand that as an educator. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to jump into an activity with you, but before I have you do it, sorry, let me just get out of here. Before I have you do the activity, I'm going to show you the website very briefly. And this is the Digital Promise website, where you're going to see all of the factors that I just showed you on the screen. And it's sort of an exploration of these different factors. But the activity that I would like you to do is I would like you to click on the strategy section, which I'm going to give you the link to this section. I'm going to put it in the chat right now to make it very easy. And I'm going to ask you to explore this from the perspective of your students now. So when you think about each category, and I'd like you to select one per color. So if you see on the left-hand side of the screen, we have a green color, a blue color, a yellow color, a red color. Just to get a little bit focused, I'd like you to just take each block, and I'd like you to select what you think is impacting your students the most within that section. Okay, we've talked about ourselves. Let's talk about our students. So maybe I think social supports are a big problem for my students. I'm going to select motivation. I'm going to select reasoning, maybe in this section. And in the red section, maybe I'll select digital literacy, since this is what we're here for. Okay, so once I've selected those 4, you see that I have narrowed down the strategies. And so it's giving me a couple ideas of how to address those specific issues with students. And in this case, it's one of the strategies is providing immediate feedback, and another strategy is simulations and immersive virtual environments. And if you expand the strategy, or you can add the strategy to your workspace to sort of like keep tabs on those. But this, just the general idea of sort of narrowing down strategies that are going to match the sort of issues or concerns that you might be having from your students is what I'd like to practice here or take a look at. So you do have this, this link to this page in the website, for the website in the chat area, and you can see that all you have to do is check boxes on the left-hand side. So I'm going to jump back into the activity, and Stephanie is going to help me get you into some breakout rooms. And here's your directions for the breakout rooms. So you're just going to go to the website that you see in the chat area. It's here also on the screen. On the left-hand side, just like I did, select up to 5 factors that you think impact your students, your adult learners. So check any boxes that you feel are the most prominent. And then you are going to discuss with your breakout room, which of the strategies do you think you can use with your adult learners? How will you use the strategy if you have any good ideas about that to share? And then just discuss that with your group. So when it says which of these strategies, we would be talking about the specific strategies that pop up based upon the checkboxes that you've selected. And if you change the selections, you will see different strategies. You can see that I'm checking different boxes and different strategies will pop up, so you can play around with it just for a couple minutes here, so that you can have some ideas. So this is sort of the let's generate some ideas type of thing. It's the resource side of this presentation, and we will get into some more specific websites soon. So Stephanie, can you help with the breakout rooms? Okay, I see everybody jumping back into the main room here. I'm going to continue. I hope that website, the Digital Promise website, might just inspire you, just give you some ideas. Some of these next slides are just going to go over some of the things that you might want to consider when we think about supporting the whole learner. When I think about digital literacy and teaching somebody to use a computer in my adult education classrooms, I think about the same thing that I would think about when I think about teaching math or reading. And it's that our adult education students very frequently have a lot going on in their lives. So it's not always 100% about content in my classroom. A lot of it is about life skills, job resumes, preparing them for life, helping them manage the emotions of test anxiety, for example, and just really helping them better their lives. So when we talk about the whole learner, we might be able to break it down into the 4 areas that you see on the screen. So cognition is one of the things, what kind of technical skills do they have? Are they able to read and write and have computational skills? When we talk about literacies, maybe we might be talking about English language learners, vocabulary in general, or in my opinion, also reference bases of the world. I will never forget the time that I was teaching a math class and figured out that many of the students in the room didn't understand that there were 4 quarters and a dollar, or the realization about how many of my adult education students have never been out of the city that we live in, or even too far out of their own neighborhoods. So it's just about those reference bases for me when it comes to general literacy, but also digital literacy is what we're here to talk about today. When I think about the background section, this is something that many of you wrote about in the chat. Things like sleep and home life and the stability, financial stability maybe, and access to resources and things like that. And the social emotional learning section certainly is something else that many of you wrote about in the chat. Are we stressed, anxious? Do we have hormonal issues, emotional issues? And are we remaining focused and motivated to do the work that we need to do to advance? So I'm going to kind of try to break through some of these strategies in the next couple of slides, and I'll jump in and out of the PowerPoint to go through some of the actual tools that you might use. So there's a couple guiding questions that go along with these categories. The first one is, do the learners you serve feel comfortable using a computer and navigating the internet? I'm going to talk a little quickly about this one. So explore opportunities to access learner skills at intake, such as North Star Digital Literacy. And I did show this website last time, but I'm going to show it very briefly again. North Star is a paid product, but it is something that is very affordable. For $500, you can have usually enough users to service one adult education location. And this is just a very quick example of the learning environment. It's there's always a speaking part. And it just,
if you look closely at the outside of a computer, you will see buttons. Here is a flash drive that you can.
It takes users through those basic computer skills. And I do think that that is an important tool for educators, because we have taught digital literacy programs in our technical college, and the instructor thought and planned to teach things like Microsoft Word and using the internet and navigating and researching and creating PowerPoints, and then found that students were struggling to turn the computer on and to use a mouse and to save a file, and the things that we may take for granted because some of us have been doing those things for 20 or 30 years. So there are many websites out there with that help students just with those basic skills. And I do like the North Star one. I think it's very easy. I'm going to show one more later on in this presentation. So do the learners you serve need access to assistive technology? I think that when we see the short video that I showed you, and it's talking about the different heights and sizes of pilots and how creating an adaptive cockpit allowed them to expand their talent pool and engage more pilots and help them perform better. We need to think about how can we as educators teach our students to use adaptive tools that will help them through their education, careers, and life. So this website is really a resource website, and it shows you a lot of different adaptive tools that you can use with students. And what I like about it, I'm going to try to zoom in if I can. What I like about this is if you look at the right-hand side, you can see the different issues that your students might be having. Okay, so maybe it's mental health, or maybe it's a physical disability. I'll click on that one. And when you click on those different issues, it gives you different resources that match that issue and help you come up with ideas as an educator to adapt to that student. So I think that it helps to have something that categorizes the different resources that you can use. So that's basically what this website does. And I just wanted to highlight that, because I think if technology is one thing, it should be something that just makes our lives easier and better. So if we find a strategy that helps a student make their school work or general life better, then it's a wonderful tool to use. So the next question is, do your learners have the vocabulary needed to communicate and understand content? So I'm going to show just a couple different websites that I happen to love now. I'm going to jump into those. And one of the first ones is Rewordify. So I feel like I'm going to jump through a couple different websites, but they are all written in the presentation that you will get through email. You'll have all these links. So don't worry about like writing anything down. But Rewordify is one of my longtime favorite websites for creating reading and vocabulary activities for students. So I'm going to show you something, and I'm going to copy this text, and I will be talking about where I got this text and how I got this text, because that's another cool thing. But basically, in Rewordify, you can copy and paste any text into this box. So any reading activity that you might like to share with students. Okay, so I've copied and pasted text, and I'm just going to click Rewordify. And what this website really does is it rewrites the text in an easier to read way. So for example, this first sentence said, "The dance between politics and economics is a delicate and intricate one." So Rewordify changed it to "The dance between politics and money flow or money-based studies is a delicate and detailed one." And it also gives you some other interesting things like statistics and grade levels and things like that. But what I really like about this is printing the learning activities, because if you want to conquer some vocabulary with students, if I go to the print learning activities section, I can make a cloze activity, a vocabulary list. I can make a matching activity. And this is one of the ones I really like, because I feel like you can do a dictation in ESOL, or it's a vocabulary activity where the students have to figure out which words are going to fit into the blanks. And it's a really fast thing that I can just print. So one of the things that I have always loved about this website is a super fast way for me to create a classroom activity related to vocabulary. When I'm working with my GED students and we're reading, for example, the science and social studies books, a lot of times they do not have a very strong understanding of the vocabulary. And I think that that is something that really helps, really hinders them from inferencing. So this is a great website for teachers to help you print out quick vocabulary activities. And we can also break down the parts of speech if you like that. You see, I can turn on and off the different parts of speech. So if you would like to focus on the nouns or pronouns, verbs, anything, you can turn on and off those parts of speech. If you don't have anything to copy and paste, you can also go into the classic literature or public documents section, and you can pick something that already exists, and you can open that document, and then it will rewordify that document for you also. So that's one website, and I'm going to continue to talk to you about a couple more. Rewordify is also integrated into Google Read and Write. So you see that here, and that's actually a slide that I just skipped over. And so I'm going to briefly show you how to do that, how to use Google Read and Write. So it is a Google Chrome extension. You'll see this little puzzle piece here. I'll turn it on. And when I turn it on, you'll see this menu bar will pop up. Using this menu bar, I have things like the ability to highlight and the ability to have this passage read to me. So I'm going to quickly show you that. I just need to highlight some of the text here. I'll do this part, and I can play.
Permanent ending. Back in 1765, American.
I can pause and stop. I have been doing quite a lot of read alouds with students lately, and I notice that many of them can read, but they don't sound out words that they don't know. They're relying on sight words and the words that they already know. But the problem with that in terms of ABE, GED, and life in general is that then you're not acquiring the ability to read new words. So I like that this will let them listen to anything that they're reading on the screen. And I think that it's a very simple plugin that they can use. I've tested this out with so many different websites, and it's really a tool that has been very successful on most of the websites that I've used. So it's a very free and simple plugin. Now I'm going to go to another website to show you something else that I like about Google Read and Write. So I've got this text here, and again, I'm going to show you how I got it. I'm going to open that extension again, and I want to show you a button here. There is a button, here where you can simplify text, simplify page. So I want to mention this because a lot of times I'm reading some sort of article with students, but there are a ton of ads or images or pictures or other things. And you can kind of see on this web page, I've got a lot of questions down here. There's more text down here. And if I simplify the page, it's going to simplify that text and just make it black and white. And it also is going to allow the students to change the color if they want to, which I have quite a lot of students that prefer different colors than the traditional black on white. And in addition to simplifying the page, there's an AI beta section, and if you click on that, what it will also do is summarize and rewrite the passage. So it's Rewordify working in conjunction as an AI feature with Google Read and Write, and it basically summarizes what you just read. So there's a lot of different ways that you might be able to use that with students, but it also lets me copy and paste this a lot easier if I had a web page that had a ton of different ads on it and things. It takes all of those off and it just gives you the text, which is very convenient as a teacher. So again, the only thing that I was using that tool that I'm showing is Google Read and Write, which you see this pop-up menu, and it is a free Google Chrome extension. So I skipped over that slide, but you have that here. So it's just talking about assistive technology and things like that, things to help our learners with general literacy. All right, jumping through the next question, are the learners that you serve able to quickly multitask and switch quickly between different tasks? I think that this is such a common need in so many different workplaces. So it's the ability to be multi-focused and continue multiple projects at the same time. One of the strategies that can really help learners be able to do this, one of the things that they really need to multitask is memory. So I've just thrown in this website, again, another resource website talking about how memory works. And the reason that this stood out to me when it comes to digital literacy or literacy in general is because I have certain students that are very focused and they can perform activities in class, but once they're taught something, for example, a math skill, by the next day they have completely lost it. And a lot of other instructors and I have really struggled to help these students move forward. A lot of times it's an older adult, and there are just a list of memory tools here. And some of the tools, for example, graphic organizers and note taking and things like that, are things that we can incorporate into our instruction through, and also be incorporating digital literacy techniques. I think when it comes to digital literacy, having students use computers and technology on a daily basis is going to really expand their abilities to interact with computers. Young students or even children who are under the age of 5 years old typically don't have problems interacting with computers because they've never lived without them. So for our adults that have lived huge chunks of their lives without a lot of technology involvement, they need that daily repetitious interaction. So I'm going to show you a couple things that go hand in hand with these memory techniques throughout this presentation. Another supporting question here. Do your learners have a good sense of how well they understand what they're reading or learning? So I'm going to talk about a couple different reading texts, reading websites. I think a lot of us are familiar with News ELA. I do want to talk about readtheory.org, which is something that you may be familiar with. This is where this passage comes from. And this does take a couple minutes to show you, but I just want to show you this new tool that popped into Read Theory. I've always loved Read Theory because it's free for everyone forever, that they have that sort of mentality and free student learning. So students have to take an 8-question pretest, and then they're able to work on reading passages for their Lexile level, and it will adapt to them. And you can also create classes and things like that. But I would like to show you this new tool. I have not signed in. I'm just gonna go to worksheets. I'm going to click on ABE worksheets. You'll notice that there are also ESL worksheets here. And I was so happy that this website added adult education, because everything's always K-12. And I'm going to click create a custom worksheet. Now, this is going to take a couple minutes, so I'm going to try to just talk through it really quickly. So I was recently working with GED students, and we were talking about politics and economics and the relationship. So I'm just going to write that topic here. And I'm going to say next step, and it's going to ask me to choose a grade level. I'll choose something high and maybe try to create a more difficult text. And then this website is going to take a couple minutes. I have noticed it takes, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes, and it will generate a text. So what I was showing you earlier, that text that was on the screen, came from this. So I'm going to just give it a moment and try to show you how this works, because I find that with my adult education students, I don't really have a lack of resources because we have tons of books, but I do like to sometimes come up with topic-specific texts or my own type of questions that match what we're already learning, so that they can have more practice. And any of you that are teaching reading comprehension knows that it's not that easy for you to just write a whole passage by yourself and come up with questions. I mean, that's very time consuming. So it's given me this paragraph now about the topics that I've provided, right? It's given itself a title, The Dynamic Interplay of Politics and Economics. And I'm just going to accept this. If I wanted to regenerate, I could. I'm going to say looks good. And then it's going to create 5 questions that will match that. So then I will have a quick to print activity that I can just use with students. So I'm going to try to give it a couple minutes so I can show you the questions. And just like with the passage, you can also print the questions. And this is something that it does for free right now. I do feel like it's going to make this part of their pro version, but right now you can do this with students. So I find it very convenient to be able to do this as a teacher and then use these activities with students. So it'll let me see the questions. And if I don't like them, I can regenerate the questions. I can say looks good. It's going to ask me for my email so I can get the passage, but then it's also going to show me the passage right here. So it's now taken the topics that I've given it, and it has written this passage, and I now have these questions to go along with it. So this is something that took me like 5 minutes to create, and it matches a lesson that we were doing in class on Monday night, so I could use it tonight with students if I wanted to. So that's readtheory.org. I think when it comes to reading comprehension, we can certainly use this tool, and it's also a tool that students can use by themselves. Okay, jumping back, I'm going to talk about this EduGFC Global website, just very briefly. This website is very simple and easy to use for learners who might have a low digital literacy level, but they have a ton of grammar tutorials and reading activities. Again, I'm just going to click on the reading to show you there's just a handful of activities in here. But what I like about these activities is they're very simple, easy to use. I think you can hear it.
Any, although,
It's
able.
It's a practice of very, very basic skills. But as I was telling you, I'm doing read alouds with a group of adults who are between 18 and 50 years old. And I hear them. I can tell that they're not sounding out words. And they even just some of these basic phonics or letter sounds is something that they may need to work on. And using this website is a way that I can differentiate. They don't all need to use it. They can put on headphones and practice this, or they can practice it on their own. I do have an adult with me at this point that will not participate in the read aloud. And I know it's because she's a struggling reader. She needs to practice this stuff. And we don't always have time to practice pronouncing words like this as a whole class in my ABE GED class, because I'm trying to teach GED reading comprehension. So I like this website because it really helps differentiate. Again, we're not teaching to the average because maybe there is no average. Okay, so next question. Do you set intentional time for goal setting with learners? This is a conversation about goal setting, reflection, and our students really, in my opinion, thinking. When I think about this strategy, right? Goal setting is motivating for learners and things like that. I think about how frequently I will ask my students a question and they will just stay so quiet. And one of the things that I've also noticed with my adult students and my high school students is that they don't take notes anymore. They don't physically write with their hands. They don't really know how to take notes, and they're not very reflective. They're not necessarily thinking. A lot of times they're just looking for an answer, a multiple choice answer, but not necessarily thinking, unpacking, or analyzing. So I'd like to show you this website here because there's a lot of different tools on this website. So I'm going to jump in here. This is a digital literacy website, and I think that it has a ton of different tools for digital learning here. So this is just the about page. They have created an open educational resource, right? They want it to be accessible to all. And a lot of the sections that you'll see on the left-hand side here are Google-based sections. So I really like using Google products with students because I think that they are more free than Microsoft. I think all of my adult students, they do have free Google accounts through our school system, but they can also make a free personal Google account and interact with so many of these items. So I'm just going to click on the graphic organizer section and you will see that there's a ton of different graphic organizers here that you can immediately copy into your own Google account and then start using with students. You can share them with students. You can have students collaborate with them. You could email them to students. You can teach your students how to make a copy directly from this website, which it takes a second to load, but they're here. They're all here. And it's a way that we can get students to participate in some note-taking, some thinking, some reflecting, some goal setting through graphic organizers, which I think is something that we are very familiar with using. And I do love to use graphic organizers on paper. I was using a KWL chart on Monday night with students. But this is something that students can make a copy of and they can then type on it. So it's a way of just having that really just brief opportunity to have students interacting with technology in your classrooms. In part one, I talked about websites like typing.com and like Google Drive and things like that, Google Sheets. But the point is that you may not be able to start teaching a whole class on Microsoft Word, but you might be able to incorporate 15-minute activities with students where they are participating in digital word processing. And therefore, the next time they do it, hopefully they'll be a little better at it, a little faster. You can teach them little formatting tools here and there, and just find little ways not to distract from the content that you're teaching, but to implement digital tools at the same time. I'm going to jump back into this same website. There is a growth mindset section if you'd like a motivational PowerPoint. There's just a ton of PowerPoints that you can copy from this website. They're all Google Drive PowerPoints, so you can make a copy and save it, edit it for yourself. There's a growth mindset one you can preview. It's got a ton of pictures, but there's also a note-taking PowerPoint, which I actually have used with students because we are so focused in K through 12 now on teaching content that we don't always teach those basic skills. And some of you may be aware, for example, that we no longer teach very much handwriting or cursive in elementary school. So those basic skills experiences that we had when we were coming through school are not necessarily the same skills that our younger adults had when they were in school. So it's like, for example, just taking notes, helping your adult learners understand how to successfully take notes. And it's just quick ways that you can access some digital tools for yourself and some things for your students. So I hope that some of these tools that we've talked about are things that you can use in your classroom. And again, I just hope that you are inspired by some of these tools, whether it be considering the learner factors or considering the many multifaceted reasons why a learner might struggle. I hope that you're just inspired to incorporate some digital tools into your instruction. And most of the websites that I have included in this presentation are free for use and fast to use. So if you're teaching a class tonight, I would hope that you would be able to use them tonight. So before we go, I do have a quick exit ticket for you, and then I will stay on the call to answer any questions, and we will have a brief survey. But next session is all about AI and what the types of tools that we can use with AI with both students and for you as an educator or for productivity. So my question, my exit ticket that I would like you to answer in the chat, if you do have any answers, and especially if you plan to attend the next session, is what type of things would you like AI to do for you? What would you love if AI could take over for you? What parts of your daily job or daily duties would AI be able to help you with, or what's something that you want to learn about AI? I may incorporate some of your ideas into the next session. And if you don't have any ideas, it's okay. I just want to thank you again for joining today. And if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I will certainly stick around to respond to those. And I just want to say thanks again.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. And folks, if you do have a question that you'd like to ask, you can unmute yourself as well. If you prefer not to put it in the chat, that's fine too. I see you have a couple of comments or a couple of feedback items there, Rebecca, with regard to the question you asked.
Lesson and unit planning, and we definitely will talk about that in the AI section. So if you can join on Monday at 2:30, we will be talking about multiple different AI tools for that and how to prompt correctly for lesson planning.
Okay.
Thank you all for joining. I appreciate your feedback. And again, I'm still here, so if you do have any questions, please feel free to ask. You
Okay,
also
thank you.
have my, oh, thanks so much. You also have my email on the screen, and I always love to hear from you. So if you would like to contact me directly, feel free to at any time. I work 5 days and 4 nights. I'm always checking email. Okay.
So we do have our session evaluation. If you can please fill that out. Stephanie shared that a little bit earlier. Maybe you can post it one more time there, Stephanie, in case anybody missed it. And we also have in there all the PowerPoint slide or the slide deck for this session, which has all the links in it. So I see you have a couple of other feedback items there, Naomi.
Absolutely. Naomi, I think that you are so correct about the dangers of AI, and I will address that just a little bit in terms of information, especially. I think that AI is a wonderful tool, and I think that it's going to take over a lot of the doing for us, but AI is not going to take over the thinking. And it's ever more important for students to understand how to critique information that they find online, because AI is such a powerful tool that it really can convince us of one thing that may or may not be true. So thank you for saying that. We will talk about that a little bit in the next section. And AI helping with teaching grammar is certainly something that I will show you. And there's certainly a lot of grammar-based AI tools these days. So we will definitely look at that.
Now, allow me to add that I think it would be useful potentially for folks to have a good understanding of how do they introduce AI tools to their students and talk a little bit about putting good prompts out there or utilizing how to structure a good prompt, I guess, to get the kind of information that you want.
Yep. And I think to go along with that, that is almost a writing lesson, really,
Yeah.
because you have to be able to string together words so that AI can understand what you want.
Right. Although I have heard that people do ask AI sometimes to help them write the prompts. So that's
Yep.
sort of an interesting piece.
You can
But
do
you
that
still
too.
need to give them you got to give the AI tool enough information to go on. That's for sure. So, okay, very good. Well, thank you, Rebecca. Great session. Appreciate it. And I hope all of you can join us next Monday at the same time for our last session focused on AI. So, any other questions before we wrap up? Okay. Thanks again. Okay. Thank you. Rebecca, you mind staying on for a second?
Of course.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.